Absolutely.
All right.
Mama gave me that name, and it's worked my whole life, so I'm proud of that name.
Yeah, you're proud of having it. Yeah. All right. So we're going to have a little talk, casual talk today about certain things. And what I like to do is first let the viewers know who you are.
Yeah.
You've been in District 16 for about what?
8 years. I'm in my 8th year. I was elected in 2016.
Right. So now you have accomplished a few things, and I actually looked at a few things and stuff you have done and sponsored, and let's do it this way. What are you most proud of? What you have accomplished so far?
Yeah, so it's a real honor just to be there. I think the most proud moments, though, when I work day to day, are when people call me from around the district and sometimes around the state, and they have issues with state agency, or whether it be DHS or whatever agency. When they are calling me and saying, "Representative, we've been working on this for 3 years, and it's at the place where I'm about to have a really bad problem," and I'm able to make phone calls to those agencies and talk to those people and get their problem solved for them. Those are the most proud moments that I have serving in the district. Now, legislatively speaking, I have done a lot of work on economic development and spent a lot of my time in that space. I created the Oklahoma, Filmed in Oklahoma Act of 2021.
Yeah, I saw that.
And we put $30 million into the film rebate. And we actually, a lot of people, especially in the Republican Party, they really don't like tax credits, you know. And so we restructured that tax credit into a rebate program. So the companies actually have to come to Oklahoma, spend their money, provide us receipts for those dollars, and then we rebate part of their money back to them instead of giving them a tax credit. And so it works really well because it stops the fraudulent activity of, we did this, now give us a tax credit, but we really didn't do it. We manipulated the system. You actually have to spend those dollars in Oklahoma. And so you can see now that we actually, in the legislature, have started moving a lot of our tax credit programs to that model. When Panasonic was trying to come to the state of Oklahoma, that was going to be a rebate program just similar to the Filmed in Oklahoma Act. So I was really proud of the Filmed in Oklahoma Act because I grew up in Okmulgee. I graduated from high school at Okmulgee High School in 1987. I played football against the Henrietta Hens at the time, and so this is my home. Right. And I was in a meeting one day with Dr. Pat from OSU IT, and he said something that was very profound to me. He said, if you're sitting in this room and you've lived in Okmulgee for however long you've been here, all you've known is decline. Mm-hmm. And that really struck a chord with me when I heard that. And then I had to, think back through the years, and he was right. My entire life, my family moved here in 1972, and my entire life I had watched this county just decline. And so when I got in office, I said, we have a lot of problems that we need addressed, but one thing that we need in this county is we need more jobs. We need better paying jobs. We need opportunities for families. A lot of times people want us to just raise taxes to pay for this, to pay for that, to pay for this, to pay for that. But I believe that if we create the right environment, see, government doesn't create jobs. No. What we do is we create environments. And if we could create better environments for companies, they'll want to bring their jobs here, which creates opportunities for more families and creates more taxpayers. Therefore, you don't have to raise taxes. Right. So I kind of went into it with that mentality of we need to create an environment for better jobs and better opportunities to create more taxpayers. So the very first thing that I did in my freshman year, Probably the biggest thing I did was I extended the aerospace engineering tax credit from a four-year sunset to an 8-year sunset. What that did for the aerospace industry, which was our third largest industry at that time, was it allowed this aerospace industry an extra 4 years to plan out their futures.
Right.
And so that's what companies need. That's what families need. That's what communities need. They need stability, right?
Right.
And so by extending that out, we actually took aerospace from our number 3 economic driver in the state to our number 2 economic driver over agriculture. So, and aerospace engineering, the film tax credit, I've worked on a lot of different things that deal with economic development, PACE lending, TIP districts, the auto engineering tax credit.
Right.
Whenever we were in negotiations with Tesla coming to Oklahoma, the auto engineering incentive in Oklahoma was one of my babies that I worked really hard on.
Right.
So diversification of our economy was a big driver for me.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned before we started here, you mentioned the economy was pretty unstable in 2016-17 when you actually came into office.
Yes.
What contributed? What do you think contributed to the changes where now instead of having negative red balance, you actually have a plus balance in budget? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I came into the office, my first year we had an $850 million budget shortfall. On my second year, $1.3 billion budget shortfall. Educators were really upset. They hadn't had pay raises in several years. So we I lived in Oklahoma City 19 months out of the first 24 months I was in office. Right. Now, keep in mind, our session runs February through May. And then we were in special sessions ever since, or the rest of that time. And so we had to increase some taxes. We increased some taxes on oil and gas. We increased the fuel tax, which more than 50% of the fuel tax is paid by out-of-staters. We did some things like that, which were very difficult votes, especially for, Republicans. And we at the state capitol are a super majority of Republicans. So increasing a tax is something that is very well thought out and very well argued and, very hard to do. So we increased some taxes and then we started implementing some policies and different things into the business community. And what we started to see was the economy started to turn. Right. Then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, the big difference for Oklahoma was we did not shut down. Now, whether you agree or disagree with, the way the governor handled COVID is not part of the conversation right now. But right. I would say because of the fact that we did not shut down, I can tell you, personally, I was talking to businesses and companies from other states that were moving their business to Oklahoma because of the fact that we did not shut down.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problem agreeing with that part because I talked about it very frequently, many times. The country where I'm coming from, I don't know if you ever studied that and saw that, but Sweden never shut down.
Yep.
They continued. And
That's
they
right.
were the country in Europe, one of the countries that had the lowest downturn in the economy. I mean, they were affected. Everybody was, but they were one of the least affected countries in Europe at that time. So I think that probably was a good decision.
Yeah, it was the right decision for our state. Incidentally, since that time, we still see companies wanting to come to Oklahoma. And what now we're seeing is that people that are living in states where they don't agree with the politics, they're moving to Oklahoma. Right. Oklahoma is like the 11th fastest growing state in the country right now.
Right.
And it's because people one are tired of the divisive politics, but they just want to be left alone. They
Yeah,
just want
I got that
government to leave them
Yeah,
alone.
I got that impression from Oklahomans.
Yeah, just leave us. In fact, I tease about it, and I've thought about really wrong. I've thought about filing a bill called the "Leave Me the Hell Alone Act of 2025." You know, and putting some language in there, but it's more about that's the spirit of Oklahoma.
Right.
We don't want government impeding on our lives so much.
Less control.
Yes.
Less dominance from
Yes.
government. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, looking forward, we have an election in 3-4 days.
Yeah.
Looking forward, what specific do you have in your agenda? It'd be nice. We have 3-4 days there. It'd be nice for the voters to know.
Yeah.
What is on your agenda to do in the next? You're sitting next for 2 or 4 years.
2 years, 2-year terms.
2-year term.
Yeah.
So, what's your plan for the next 2 years?
So really what I want to focus on in this upcoming session, we have leadership change in the House. I'll be part of the leadership team that's coming in. My good friend Kyle Hilbert is the new Speaker of the House.
Right.
And so I'll be on his leadership team. I want to focus on several things. One thing that is high priority to me is Knight's Law. It is in response to the murders that happened here in Henrietta a few years back. I ran the bill last year. We did not get that through the Senate. My Senate author, however, came to me a few weeks ago and decided he wanted to move forward with it, but he had some different ideas, and I liked his ideas. So we do plan on moving Knight's Act forward, and we feel like we'll be able to get the momentum behind it. And it deals with sexual predators, and the 6 most heinous crimes against children and sexual predators. I haven't seen the new language that he's going to propose to me, but I talked with him 2 days ago,
right.
And he's going to get that to me immediately after the election. And so that'll be a high priority bill for me. Tribal relations is a big issue in the state of Oklahoma. As we know, the governor has been at war and at odds with the tribes nearly since the day he came into office. And the governor and I have sat down one-on-one, and I've had those conversations with him and said, look, Governor, I don't always disagree with you where you stand on tribal issues, but you have to realize that McGirt was handed down in my hometown.
Right.
I mean, that decision was handed down in Okmulgee with the Muskogee Nation.
Right.
And so it's a real important issue all across the state, but it affects us differently because it was handed down right here in our district.
Right.
So I really plan to work on developing things with state government and our tribes to try to work better together.
Right.
I've had many conversations with the tribes about, listen, the only time you guys are up here working with us on legislation is when it directly affects the tribe. But there are many issues up here that directly affect your citizens. I'm a Choctaw citizen
right.
myself. There are many issues that affect, the citizens of your tribe, and we don't hear from the tribe on those issues. So we need to have a better dialogue with the tribes and work better together and strengthen those relationships.
Why do you think that is? Is it the tribe that shies away, or is it that the other side hasn't paid attention to it?
That's a very fair question. I think it's a combination. I think the tribes feel like often state government doesn't understand tribal sovereignty.
Right.
And so that throws up a wall. And then the state says, hey, we're a sovereign state. And so I think I think there's just a natural barrier that has been built for years. And it's time for that wall to come down.
Right.
It's almost like Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, tear that wall down. It's time for the state of Oklahoma and our tribal leaders to tear that wall down and begin to work together, because we have so many assets that we can work on together that we can make Oklahoma a much greater state if we'll begin that process.
Right. That sounds good.
And then I'll have several other bills that I'll run. I'm going to work some more on the Filmed in Oklahoma Act. I plan to do a little more work there, try to increase that, incidentally. Go ahead.
Can you, I don't fully understand that act, the film.
Sure.
And I think maybe some of the viewers, hasn't got it. I know it's related to the film industry, or is it how?
Yeah. So really what happens is if you're a film company and you want to do film in Oklahoma, in the state of Oklahoma, we have two buckets that you fall under. You either fall under 7.5 million as your budget or less, or 7.5 and above. And what we do is we have two buckets of monies that are sitting there in reserves for film companies that want to come to Oklahoma and build or do a film in Oklahoma. The thing about the film industry that I loved whenever I took a look at it was the film industry hires people that are unskilled workers. Oftentimes it's OJT, on the job training. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you want to work in the film industry, there could be a spot for you. So whenever people want to go work in the film industry, they don't have to have a college degree, a career tech degree. They may not even be graduated they may have a GED. And the film industry will accept them in. The other thing about the film industry is it hits all the spectrum, from accounting to banking to heat and air to construction workers, framers. It hits all the spectrums of labor. Right. So I really liked it. And the way it works is if you want to come film in Oklahoma and you get approved through a process through the Department of Commerce, the Oklahoma Office of Film and Music, if you get approved, you get a 20% rebate on the money you spend in Oklahoma only on employees, what they call below the line. They're not the actors. They're not the big producers. They're the heat and air guys. They're the framers. They're the electricians. Those people. Okay. You get a rebate on your catering. And if you film in rural areas, you can get what's called an uptick. So you get that 20% based on your Oklahoma spend whenever you come and you film. Whenever you meet certain guidelines, you could inch that up to 30%. So if you film in a rural community, for example, you get a 2% uptick. So now you went from 20 to 22%.
All right.
It just so happens that the rural area is defined by population of 12,000 or less. And I believe it's around 50,000 or less in the county, something like that. Right. I'd have to go back and look at the exact language. 2021 was a while back. Other things is if you do your post-production in Oklahoma, different things like that. So there's some upticks in that program. And then once the film is wrapped and everything's all done, then you submit your receipts. Right. And we go over it at the state. Right. And then you can get a rebate. I
don't know if this was ready, but recently there was a film shot in Okmulgee somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. I heard a lot of businesses were not too happy about that. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting because whenever a film company comes into a community, my experience has been that they pay everybody.
Right.
They pay everybody. I mean, if you're even remotely affected by that film being shot, they're going to pay you. So yes, there were some businesses that were shut down, but there were very few. But some of those business owners actually went and got into the film and
got compensated a little bit that way.
They got a little bit of compensation there, but like Reservation Dogs, when they filmed Reservation Dogs in Okmulgee, if you had a house that was next door to the house the film was being filmed in and being shot at, if you had a house next to it or the next one down or the next one down, they paid you a daily rate basically for inconveniencing.
Right.
Now, I don't know what all those rates are, and they probably varied by company and by film based on budget. But the film industry tries really hard to compensate people that they inconvenience. And so there were people that were upset about it, but, there were roughly 200 Oklahomans that were working downtown in Okmulgee while that film was being shot for 2 weeks. So the amount of impact it has on people working is really, really big. People don't understand. You go watch a film, you go watch a movie, you don't see everything going on behind the scenes. Right. You go to a film set where they're actually filming, there are anywhere from 100 to 300 people on the set.
How is Tulsa King doing?
Well, Tulsa King, you know,
It turned out to be a super popular series around the entire world.
yeah,
And I had never heard of it. When I came here, I came out of retirement.
gotcha,
I've been retired for over 12 years.
gotcha,
And when we bought Henrietta, and I came out of retirement, moved from Asia into Henrietta.
yeah,
And we had Tulsa King in Philippines, where I live.
wow.
Popular series.
So,
Just
yeah.
a side
So it's funny,
side thing, you know.
a friend of mine was over in Taiwan back
Right.
in the spring
Right.
and sent me a picture of the marquee out in front of somewhere, and it was advertising Twisters.
Oh, okay.
And so he was kind of excited because he serves with me in the legislature.
Right.
In fact, so it's really exciting, but Tulsa King was kind of an interesting situation for us. So when I initially did the film rebate program, so when we do these programs, you have to reserve some money in a pot. Doesn't mean you necessarily spend it. It's just, it's just in reserve, encumbered, I guess you might say. When Tulsa King came in, everybody was really excited about it. Nobody knew what it was going to do.
Right.
And their budget tripled immediately.
Wow.
So we had them set up at a certain budget level, and we have a cap on, we have a $30 million cap on our film
Right.
rebate program. And so we just didn't have the money in our budget to offer them to keep it here because their budget exploded so much.
Right. Yeah.
So they moved, I believe they're actually filming that in Atlanta now. And I hate that. Now there was a rumor because, Sylvester Stallone got off an airplane and said, you know, it's hotter than hell in Oklahoma. And, everybody thought that it was too hot for Sylvester Stallone. And that wasn't the reason why they moved on. The reason they moved on is because we just didn't have enough money primarily in that rebate program in order to keep them here.
Right.
In the film industry, those executives and those companies, I mean, they follow the money. I mean, they just do. And the Republican Party has been, as I stated earlier, they're very free market principled, you know, and I am as well. But I also understand that in order for Oklahoma to compete, in order for Oklahoma to attract businesses, we have to compete with other states.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's how we do it.
On another subject, that's a hot subject. Don't know where you stand on it, but what are the Republicans doing for health care for the Oklahomans?
Well, I mean, we had, you know, through a vote of the people, we had the expansion of Medicaid, and that has gone well. We continue to put money into that. My biggest concern, and my opponent talks about this too a lot, is mental health. I mean, mental health is a crisis, not just in Oklahoma, not just in Okmulgee County.
Yeah.
It's across the nation. And for whatever reason, it seems like people are just, I don't know if it's more awareness or if technology is creating an environment that just keeps people more stressed out, but mental health is a real crisis.
I would probably say that social media is a big factor,
I would
contributor to mental health issues.
I would agree with you.
And people just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I agree with you. And so what I do know, and I don't have any details on it, is that our leadership team that is going to be taking over the speakership in the House, we have plans to put together a comprehensive mental health program to put more funding into it. Part of the problem, though, is there is a political divide on mental health. So we used to have state institutions, right?
Right.
And they weren't great. And people were treated terrible, and families were separated and all these different things. But we live in the 21st century.
Right.
So we're a lot smarter than we used to be. But what we said in America was it's more humane to take somebody with a mental health issue and put them out on the streets to live under a bridge, homeless, than it is for them to have a facility that they stay in and that they're required to be there, that they're fed and that they're taken care of. We could fix the problems of inhumane treatment from employees.
Right.
But until we realize, and I have bipartisan agreement in the House here at the state level, that probably wasn't the greatest idea, was to just kick everybody out in the street. So we allow mental health patients two options. If your family's not involved and you're not being taken care of, you can live on the streets, in a tent somewhere in the city, or you can go to jail. You get the choice. That's what we offered. And it's a lot less expensive to help mental health patients and treat mental health patients than it is to incarcerate them. And so when you look at the numbers, it just makes more sense that we invest in mental health opportunities for families.
Yeah.
I will tell you that there's a personal situation that I know of where a young lady is struggling with probably opiates and mental health issues.
Common problem today.
Mental health issues and opiates. And so we tried to get a scenario, because she would be open to it if we could figure out the path before you present it to her. We tried to create a situation where if she agreed, a family member could become a legal guardian over her and have her put into a program where she couldn't get out until she had been treated and then had enough cognitive awareness to be able to make some decisions. She lives by herself right now. She drives the streets. She essentially takes care of herself, but she needs serious help. And you cannot hardly do that.
No. And all this, doesn't it also impact the influx of opioids coming across the border and all that? Isn't that part of this creating turmoil?
So the southern border is one of the biggest issues across our country that citizens of the United States are concerned with, is the influx of people crossing over the southern border. Now, we passed a bill, and the Democrat side of the chamber said we were just passing this bill to get political votes, but that wasn't the case at all. We had to do something because essentially all states have become border states at this point, with as many people that are crossing into our country. So we passed a bill, and I argued for that bill, but the southern border used to primarily import a lot of marijuana. That used to be the big, market coming across the border. It's no longer. Oklahoma legalized marijuana, and we produce more marijuana all across the country than any other state or country out there. And that's another issue that I've worked diligently on and tried to fix. So the Mexican drug cartels had to shift, because they
basically shifted.
They shifted to fentanyl and those types of things. Really dangerous drugs. And so we have to continue to work on protecting the citizens of the state of Oklahoma as it pertains to these types of drugs that are very dangerous.
Isn't that also kind of a part of, especially for the younger generation, isn't that a part of an educational thing as well? You don't grow up being an addict.
No.
You become an addict because you start using the drug. Is there anything done on the educational side? Early on in life, teenagers, high school, that kind of stuff too.
I would have to go back to see exactly what programs are in each individual school districts, because I'm just not aware. I don't get that granular oftentimes, unless somebody asks a question, and then I go research it. The one thing we talked about a little earlier was term limits. And,
Yeah.
you know, I'm in my 8th year. You can't learn everything even in 8 years. So you have to go back and you have to study things every day.
Right.
There's something new I learned. But with that being said, it's a lot about education. But I think we're so far behind on security
Right.
that we can't take the time to focus on education because we're trying to figure out how do we stop the criminals that are bringing this in.
Right.
And it's a real, you know, chicken and egg scenario. I heard just the other day that one of the new things amongst our college students is having fentanyl parties. And I'm like, wait, how does that even work? You have a party to go have some kind of evening taking fentanyl.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and there was not long ago where you had some cases of that in the state of Florida, where at least one or two just
Yeah, it's kind of like
died.
it's kind of like in the 90s when you had ecstasy parties,
Right.
you know, and so yeah, there needs to be a lot more education because I don't know that people are really catching the fact that if you take just the right amount, which is as small as the head of a pin,
Yeah.
it can kill you.
You might not
Yeah.
get out of there.
That's right. So yeah, I believe we do need to probably do a better job educating.
Yeah,
on this
I think that is an important part, and obviously that comes from the political side, on both sides of the aisle need to work together and get that into the school system, because I think it starts there. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And I think it starts in the family. And that's a big problem.
Yeah.
You know, the family breakdown is just taking a really bad toll on our country.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's not the case. But, you know, when you have students in high school taking care of their brothers and sisters that are in middle school and elementary school because the parents aren't taking care of them and they're making sure they get up and they go to school, right. That's a real problem. Okay. And so the breakdown of the family, in my mind, is where it starts.
Right.
And then needs to be a part of the education system. And you have to be careful in the education system because you have such a broad range of ideals
right.
within the school system. You have to be really careful about what you teach or don't.
Yes, but to me, and I'm asking you and I, right? Yeah. I see some of these, especially drug use. I see that as moral issues to actually teach our kids. The adults should do it, but adults has abandoned their responsibility in many cases.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. The problem with government is this. Everybody looks to government to solve their problems, and government moves so slow, and it's designed to move slow because when government moves fast, government makes big mistakes.
Right.
And so, I don't disagree with you that these are issues that we have to talk about and we have to discuss, and they're hard issues, and we have to have bipartisan conversations about it. But it seems like in the environment we live in today, everything has become so partisan. Right. That having a conversation about ice cream is become a fight. And that I look forward to the day that our country can look at each other. I don't necessarily know what your political views are. You probably have an idea of mine better than I have of yours, but it doesn't matter. We should be able to have a conversation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that we can get something done.
I grew up in a country that was governed by social democrats, which is not the communism, but it's kind of the social part. I grew up in that. Mm-hmm. Sweden has since then turned to shifted to the right, which I think in many instances That was good because Sweden was burdened with taxes. We were burdened with, we still have high taxes there, but we were burdened with taxes in the range of 60%, up to 60, 70%. So you take home, let's say a six-figure income, 100 grand, and you take home
$60,000 of it's going to tax.
Yeah, it just doesn't work that way.
And I would say with taxes combined in the United States, we're not far off. When you consider property tax, you consider sales tax, you consider income tax, you consider death tax, you consider capital gains tax, you just consider all the taxes, you're probably not.
Yeah, and why do we collect these many taxes? I mean, this is how I look at government. The bigger the government grows, the more tax revenue they need, and the more ineffective we become. In my view, I think we should actually have minimal government and make them way more effective than they are today.
I agree 100%. Let's talk about that for just a minute if we could. So here's how it goes. The state of Oklahoma, I'm proud to say, has a balanced budget every year. We balance the budget every year. We don't carry stuff over into the next year. In fact, it is against the state constitution for the 60th legislative session that is coming up. It's unconstitutional for us to encumber financially future legislatures. That's one of the great, a lot of people like to say a lot of bad things about Oklahoma, but one thing about it is we have a balanced budget, and that's a great thing for a state.
Right.
With that being said, here's what happens. The federal government is so far out of control. What they do is they establish a program, and they tell the state of Oklahoma, if you'll participate in this program, we're going to fund it. And then they fund it for 5 or 6 years, however many years. They get us citizens to where we have family members or friends or people that we know that are part of that program. And then they jerk the funding. And so they get people dependent on a program.
Right.
They jerk the funding, and then we, as the state legislature, have to make a decision. Do we jerk the funding and just let that go, let them take their funding back and the program goes away? Or do now we pick up as the state, do we pick up this funding? So I'm going to tell you how difficult these situations can get. Last year, the EBT program was being funded by the federal government through COVID, and it was about $4 million that was being spent on meals for school-age children.
Right.
Right? The federal government jerks the funding, the $4 million. And so the person that chairs the committee that oversees the budget for that comes to me and says, what do we do? Representative Fetgatter, we either have to put $4 million more into this out of our budget,
Right.
or the kids don't get those meals. That's a tough decision.
Right.
Because we want limited government, but now we have this new $4 million expense that the federal government created and decided to pull. By the way, those are our $4 million tax dollars that they decided to jerk them back out of our state.
Right.
Because that's how they get their money, is from you, the taxpayer, and me, the taxpayer.
Right.
So they jerk the $4 million back, and we have to make a decision. And so there are hundreds of these types of programs that are in state government that were funded at one time by the federal government. They jerked the program away. It was going to affect a large swath of Oklahoma citizens, and the state legislature has to say, hey, what do we do?
What do we do now?
Do we jerk the benefit?
Right.
So when we talk about lower taxes and smaller government, that's literally the conversation. The actual conversation is, what services do we take away from the citizens of Oklahoma so that we can cut government? Because I'm with you. I think government, like I said earlier, people have gotten to a place where they look to government for solutions.
Right.
And we are not great at problem solving. We should be taking care of infrastructure. We should be taking care of public safety. We should be taking care of education, these types of things.
Right.
But when we get off into different places,
Right.
it's not great.
Right.
Government's not a great solution.
Yeah. Well, when I'm talking about cutting funding, I think I'm more relating it to effectiveness of what's there and what can be done. Right. We have many example of you can cut half the staff of employees and run even more smooth and effective because half of them are interfering in what the other half is doing.
No, there is some of that goes on, but just a little bit of history for you. You know, I talked about my first 2 years
Right.
in office. Those budget deficits were happening prior to me coming in. I was just on the tail end of it where we actually fixed the problem. And they had already cut most agencies in the state of Oklahoma by 20%.
Right.
To try to fill these budget gaps. So we had already done a lot of cuts since then. I actually ran a bill with Senator Thompson 5 years ago to eliminate a state agency altogether.
Right.
So there was a Republican member at the time that had this great idea: if we consolidate all these services from all these different agencies into one agency, it'll save the state money.
Right.
It's absolutely cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars. It's been a terrible idea.
Right.
And it's caused and created chaos in different agencies all across the state. Mm. And so I ran with Senator Thompson, I ran a bill to eliminate completely that agency and put all those responsibilities back into the agency that had whatever it was, whether it was IT services or billing right. or contracts or whatever.
Right.
I was asked, would I give them 2 years to try to fix the problems. They've worked on some of the problems, and but I would run the bill again tomorrow if I thought I could eliminate the agency, right. just because I don't think it's an effective program.
Right. Okay. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add? 3 days away from voting.
Yeah.
What are your expectations?
Yeah. So listen, I've served House District 16 for 8 years. I'm not a career politician. I've never been in politics prior to this. I achieved everything in life that I've achieved with a 12th grade education and a lot of hard work. If you live in the district, you don't elect me because I necessarily agree with you on all the issues that are out there. People elect me because if you call my office, you probably have about a 98% chance I'm personally going to call you back. If you email my office, about a 98% chance I'm going to email you back. If you text me, if you message me on social media, I'm going to be the person that calls you back. Because I believe the greatest service I can do to the district is to make sure that if you reach out to me, I call you back. Am I 100%? No. I try, but I have 40,000 constituents that reach out to me at different points.
It can get
through time.
Pretty busy, but
it can get a little crazy.
But isn't it also part about learning to listen to the constituency around?
Yeah.
And listen to the people that actually put you where you are today?
That's right. Because a lot of times people will say, especially when we're up there in political world, in the dome, in the bubble, they'll say, well, you're not listening to what Oklahomans want. And I'm listening to you when I'm at Walmart. I'm listening to you when I'm at the restaurants. I'm listening to you when you call me and you text me or you email me. I had a new constituent just moved into the district recently, and we send a letter out to everybody that's new to the district right. that registers to vote and welcome them to the district. And he wasn't necessarily a Republican, but he was shocked that I responded to him within an hour or two of him sending me an email thanking me for sending him a letter. And so that's how I listen. I listen by watching social media, talking to people. People call me at 11 o'clock at night sometimes. They call me on Thanksgiving. They call me on Christmas, and it doesn't bother me.
You responded to me early at 6 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, I try to be responsive to the
Right.
constituents, and I think that's the greatest role that I can play, is to make sure that if you have a question or you have a need or you have a want,
Right.
I listen to what that is. And then if I can't provide it and I can't help you, I won't leave you hanging out there wondering.
Right.
I will let you know. And I think that's probably the best service I can offer to the constituents.
All right. All right.
All right.
It was a pleasure having you here. And,
Good to meet you.
And we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah. I appreciate seeing the studio. I'm excited for you guys.
So we'll do it sometime, and we'll go from there.
All right.
And we'll see you again.
All right.
Probably Tuesday.
I appreciate that.
Bye.